प्रमुख स्वामी सुखकारी ये संत परम हितकारी।
गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारिणी। गाथा महापुरुषनी संत परम हितकारिणी।
महापुरुषनी आछे कथा प्रमुख सुखकारी।
Leadership is not a position or a title. It's about action and example. True leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. In Pramukh Sai Maharaj's case, this was no different. In fact, his life redefines the literature of leadership as it is recognized in the world today. In the mid-1950s, Swamishri led solely by example. He brought a togetherness amongst the people through his own efforts and capabilities. With his unmatched levels of efficiency, excellence and perfection, he became very quickly recognized as a highly skilled master, proficient in all trades.
As the Pramukh and a senior figure of the Sanstha, Swamishri was juggling multiple responsibilities. He had his administrative duties, which meant he was always on the move, traveling to all the mandirs, meeting with the kotaris and the other swamis, just to ensure that everything was running smoothly and more often than not, resolving problems. Alongside his administrative duties, there were his satsang responsibilities as well. They continued just as unabated. So he would be doing padaramanis, delivering katha and parayans, and meeting Haribhaktas for their own pastoral care.
Of course, in those days, there were no virtual meetings or video calls to make life easier. So he had to be present in person to give his guidance. But remember, back in those days, there were no separate travel arrangements for Swamishri. Sometimes there would be a bullock cart. Typically, the wheels of a bullock cart are made with wood and they are fixed with iron rims. So if you sit in one of them, the ride is far from a comfortable one. But Swamishri only had one thing on his mind. He thought to himself that I want to perform seva as long as this body lasts. Indeed, his mind could never entertain the thought of sitting comfortably in one place or just in one mandir. Sometimes he would hop into a wagon attached to a tractor and travel through bumpy roads. Other than that, his mode of transport was either a state transport bus, which is like a public bus, or a third-class compartment in a local train. Despite the difficulties and hardships, Swamishri never relaxed the vow of celibacy, but he adhered to it very carefully.
He had no personal room waiting for him wherever he went. He would be sleeping, eating, bathing in communal facilities with everyone else. There was nothing VIP or special about Pramukh Swami. He would effortlessly, silently adjust to whatever was available without fuss or frustration.
Despite multitasking, Swamishri gave his full attention to the smallest of details, and he patiently found solutions with a sound and steady mind. He was an expert in all the fields. Firstly, he engaged in the planning of Sanstha meetings, and sometimes these meetings lasted several hours. Secondly, during the mandir visits, he would walk briskly through the campus and he would point out any improvements or renovations that were needed to the facility. He would also take a close look at the financial status of the mandir, as well as the human resource development. He would look into the administration of the mandir, the satsang activities that were going on, and of course the daily rituals. He would also look at the involvement of volunteers and devotees in that mandir. Thirdly, Swamishri would plan and organize a series of meetings with all the different department heads. First, he would sit down with the responsible sadhus and sevaks to assess the details, and then he would have a discussion with them. Next, he would spend time, maybe an hour and a half, to fully understand everything in precise detail. Finally, Swamishri would resolve any queries and give valid solutions. There were no conference halls or meeting rooms in those days. So for most part of the meeting, mats would be placed on the floor for seating. And Swamishri himself would sit on one of those mats with the rest of the delegation. He was always very humble and straightforward. Fourthly, whenever he made those visits to the mandir, he would also go to the farmland or the field, and he would ask in detail about the number of people working on the farmland, and he would also ask about the farming methods, the harvest, the use of fertilizers, the irrigation process, and the livestock, along with dairy farming.
When there was so much work going on and so little time, when there is so much pressure and so little means, it's easy to let other things suffer. And the first thing that gets compromised is our own bhakti, our personal bhakti and niyam dharma. We justify becoming lax in our observances, our bhakti, because we tell ourselves, yeah, but I'm doing so much seva. Swamishri never did that. Never. He remained just as firm in his daily devotional practices, his arti, katha, cheshta, and his niyam dharma. His seva karya was never at the cost of dharma or bhakti.
Whenever Swamishri was in Sarangpur, he would perform 125 pradakshinas, not once but twice in a day, without fail, at Shastriji Maharaj's Smriti Mandir. And when he was in Gondal, he would perform 125 pradakshinas of the Akshaderi. Now he would do this every time he visited those mandirs.
This was truly remarkable about Swamiji. When he was engrossed in his Sanstha work, he was so diligent and meticulous. He'd be attending to every detail with utmost focus and precision. When you see him in a meeting or on a work site, you'd think he is a master administrator. But the very next minute, if you observed him doing arti or katha or in his puja, he would be totally absorbed in his personal devotion, as if that was the only thing that was important to him, as if he had nothing else to do at all. And that's because the two for him were not different. His seva was his bhakti. And he approached both the same. He would be as patient in a meeting as he was in his puja, just as calm and composed. He could be doing a padramani in the town or doing pradakshina in the Akshaderi. His work would be the same. Whether speaking to thousands in a parayan from a scripture, or conversing one-to-one with the Haribhakta on a family matter. he would be just as articulate, just as humble. This was Pramukh Swami. He was the leader and a sevak. For him, the two weren't incompatible. They were inseparable. In 1962, during the festival marking the birth anniversary of Shastri Maharaj, Swamishri was in Atladra, and the mandir was going to have new golden Kadash pots installed on top of the shikhars, as well as a special golden siyasan for the murtis. From this seva to several other sevas, Swamishri was managing the arrangements for the entire celebration, for the entire festival. During the celebrations, you could see the sharpness of Swamishri's eye for even the smallest of details. And some of this was captured by Swamishri himself in his own personal daily journal. In an entry for the 8th of February 1962, it was the day before Vasant Panchami, Swamishri writes in his diary, he says, the Kadash pots were to be raised and the yagna had started. Kadash pots were installed at night on the shikhars. At night, 200 kilos of khichdi was prepared. Actually, 240 kilos were necessary.
We can see from that very small note that Swamishri noted the shortcomings faced even in the kitchen department, where he was not directly involved. Obviously, he was on hand to fix any such problems. But the incident highlights his unique quality, which came naturally and instinctively. We can see that even when his eyes were focused on the raising of the Kadash pots, the trivial logistical difficulties in the kitchen did not escape his attention. Swamishri focused on getting the trivial things right, precisely and perfectly.
After the celebrations in Atladra, Swamishri eventually reached Garada. During his stay here, Swamishri, alongside Yogiji Maharaj, performed the groundbreaking ceremony of the new Nirgun Bhavan that was going to be constructed as a residential premises for pilgrims. The following day, in Garada, Swamishri went to the local Kothari Sant to observe the progress of wheat, lucerne, and other crops being cultivated in the mandir's farm. Swamishri checked the quality of the harvest and was very satisfied. On 15th of February 1962, Swamishri departed from Garada to reach Tajpur, a nearby village, where they were preparing for the Murti Pratishta celebrations. The following day, Swamishri consulted with a mason for the marble flooring at Sarangpur Mandir. And then he directed a carpenter about making a cupboard, which was going to be used for stocking prasad and storing other food. Then on 18th February, Swamishri reached Gondal and had to give guidance on a legal matter regarding some construction work. From Gondal, Swamishri travelled to Ahmedabad on 20th February, where he finalized the mandir's entrance gate, the construction work, and the height of the compound wall. On the following day, 21st February, Swamishri commenced a parayan in the village of Rajpur. With each new day, not only was Swamishri in a new location, but the nature of his work was also changing. There's a famous lyric in one of Premanand Swami's kirtans. He's addressing God as he writes, "Tu murshid hai kamil kabil, sab hunnar tere haath mein." He's saying to God, you are so skillful and proficient and an expert. You are a master of all talents. Swamishri was a pure vessel of God. And because God worked through Swamishri, he was a master of all. There was nothing that was beyond Swamishri.
Along with the management and the organizational skills, Swamishri had a remarkable understanding of sculptural art. During one such incident in August of 1962, a marble murti of Shastriji Maharaj was being carved by a sculptor named Shivanarayan, who was based in Jaipur. That murti was to be installed in Gondal. So while in Jaipur, Swamishri often visited the murti workshop and he inspected the model of the murti prepared by the sculptor. But he was not very happy with the model. Therefore, he instructed the sculptor to prepare another model of Shastriji Maharaj's murti. And after 2 days, Swamishri again examined that model in detail. But again, he was not fully satisfied. He felt that there was still something missing. So the next day again, Swamishri gave the necessary instructions to the sculptor. And accordingly, Shivanarayan created yet another model of the murti. However, Swamishri was still not completely satisfied with that either.
So he gave further finer suggestions on how to improve the model. Now, actually, it was time for Swamishri to leave Jaipur and return to Ahmedabad. But the work here on Shastriji Maharaj's murti was not complete yet. So Swamishri changed his itinerary. He postponed his departure from Ahmedabad and stayed on in Jaipur to complete this work. The following day, Swamishri went again to examine the murti's work and arranged for it to be photographed again. The work still did not satisfy Swamishri. So Swamishri again suggested a few more refinements to the sculptor. For weeks, Swamishri stayed in Jaipur to ensure Shastriji Maharaj's murti was as perfect as it could be. Adding those final touches revealed Swamishri's deep understanding about the intricacies in the art of sculpting, and also his patience and his passion for perfection. Swamishri's remarkable understanding of sculptural art amazed even Shivanarayan and the other sculptors. They had mastered their art of sculpting through hereditary as well as training. Swamishri managed the whole task with immense patience. He was respectful of Shivanarayan's expertise and experience, but at the same time, he never compromised on the quality of work. Because at the end of the day, it was Swamishri who had seen and lived with Shastriji Maharaj, and he loved his guru more than anyone. And this is why today, when millions of people around the world have the darshan of the murtis within BAPS mandirs, and they experience that inner peace and enjoy the aesthetic beauty of the murtis and the mandirs, it has been because of Swamishri's devotion and his deep knowledge of art and his persistence for perfection.
In the first decade of his tenure as president, Swamishri had been kept busy with other aspects of the Sanstha through various key events that took place during this time. In 1952, Swamishri commenced the construction of Shastriji Maharaj's memorial place, following his 87th birth anniversary celebrations. The following year, a special train pilgrimage saw Guru Yogiji Maharaj, Swamishri, and senior sadhus and devotees journey through sacred places across the north of India. A second train pilgrimage was arranged 3 years later, taking Yogiji Maharaj's entourage through northern and central parts of India. And as the presence of the Sanstha increased year on year, 1959 saw Yogiji Maharaj express his wish to take Swamishri along with him on a foreign tour to Africa. This would become the first of many long, exhaustive trips across the oceans for Swamishri. We now join Swamishri, serving his 10th year as a leader.
The whole of the satsang fold was waiting for the Kalash installation ceremony of Gadra. This was to be celebrated on 11th and 12th of May 1961. invitation cards to the devotees, personally signed by Swamishri, had been sent out.
Preparations also, they were in full swing. Donations of raw materials had started to come in. Holes were being dug at the grounds. The holes were for the pillars that were then going to support the canopy and the tent. Gold leafing for the garosh pots and flagpoles. And all the residencies in Gadra, the streets of Gadra, the residences that thousands of devotees would use for accommodation during the festivals, they were cleaned out. The entire atmosphere in the entire village of Gadra was charged with energy. But the silent source of all the energy and the catalyst of everything was Pramukh Swami Maharaj himself.
From the moment Yogiji Maharaj delegated this project to Swamishri, in organizing the festivities of Gadra, Swamishri continuously toiled hard for every need of the festival. Swamishri's handwritten diary reveals the total alertness and the eagerness of Swamishri to celebrate this festival.
The festivals were due to take place in the month of May in 1961, but 6 months before this, in November 1960, when we go through Pramukh Swami Maharaj's diary, we find Pramukh Swami in Bochasan. And on the 4th of November 1960, Swamishri writes in his diary that Khengar Bhai, Magan Bhai, Harshad Bhai, Pujya Swamiji, as in Yogiji Maharaj, Pujya Mota Swami and others, all were present in a meeting, and ongoing discussions regarding the preparations for the festival in Gadra had occurred.
7th of November 1960, he is in Bhadran. He writes in his diary, Padram is in the morning, Padram is in the evening. Donation 3,000 rupees for the Gadra festival. Possibility of 1,000 to 1,500 will be coming in.
Now Swamishri was extremely smart. He knew what needed to be done. He knew that 6 months before the Utsav, to give the preparations the best possible start, the most important thing at that time were funds. And he toured from town to town, city to city, to all of the houses of our devotees and encouraged everyone to put their hands in their pocket and give funds for the preparations of the festival. In Sanskrit, there is a saying which translates in English to, if you are to plant seeds today in order to yield crops, the best possible crops tomorrow, for every inch of that land needs to be known, of the farmland that you are about to farm. In the same way, 10 days after this entry, we find Pramukh Swami Maharaj in Gadra itself on the 18th of November, where he travelled to Gadra to inspect every inch of the grounds where the festival was going to take place. On this day, 18th of November 1960, Swamishri writes in his diary that we had talks with the Kotari regarding some necessary preparations for the festival in the month of Vaishak.
Now at the same time, the local council, the Panchayat, had decided to put on a random and unfair pilgrim tax on any pilgrims, Haribhaktos, that came to the village. Now Swami felt that this was unreasonable.
And so Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he immediately sprung into action. 20th November 1960, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he notes in his diary that in the morning he went to Gopinath Mandir, he did darshan there. Then he went and visited the Kotari Swami there. And after visiting with him and talking to him, Pramukh Swami Maharaj went to the local municipality. There he met with the vice president and he met with other members. And he explained to them that this pilgrimage tax was very unjust.
So Swamishri, he spoke to all of these people in a calm and friendly tone, with real simple and clear logic. He listened to what they had to say as well, and without any sense of ego or any sense of force. Swami's words were open, he was honest, unselfish, and what he was saying was really for the greater good of everyone. His voice of reason got through to those in charge. And 25 days later, after talking to the relevant officials, Swami, he writes in his diary on now the 15th of December 1960, did darshan at the old Gopinath Ji Mandir, talked to someone, talked about the pilgrim tax, which the municipality has postponed for now.
And so Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he averted an obstacle that was going to come to the Samayo. And what was so unique about this was that many of the devotees that would come to the Samayo, they would never know that was something that Pramukh Swami Maharaj did, some time ago. And it was his timely manner, his alertness, his ability to go and engage into conversation and have dialogues with everyone that averted this obstacle, and which allowed them to, celebrate the festivals with ease, and everyone enjoyed the celebrations.
This was Swamishri's way, silently toiling in the background, all of the while never letting others know of his successful efforts. After resolving all the pertinent issues in Gadada, Swamishri then left for Vicharan to collect further donations for the festival.
Pramukh Sai Maharaj was in a town called Valyampura near Himmatnagar. And there he was meeting with individuals to do Lakhani, collect pledges for the Vaishak Samaya that was going to happen in Gadara. And so 21st December 1960, Swamishri writes in his diary, sat with individuals, collected the pledges and collected 6,000 rupees. So this was Pramukh Sai Maharaj's way, that he would go to these villages and towns, sit with individuals, ask them to contribute and get their pledges, and then he would note down in his diary.
Now, during these first couple of weeks of Swamishri's diary, when he began the preparations, when he was touring, there was only one certainty in Swamishri's daily schedule, that nothing was certain. And in this entry we can see on the 22nd of December, Swamishri writes in his diary, from Himmatnagar he was due to travel to Ahmedabad. He was going to spend the entire day in Ahmedabad and spend the night in a small village near Ahmedabad called Nainpur. But Swamishri writes in his diary for the 22nd of December 1960 that the pledges for Gadara's Vaishak festival were ongoing. For that, we stayed here for one more day. Then we had to travel to Nainpur in the evening, but cancelled it and decided to stay in Ahmedabad. So we can see in Swamishri's life, regardless of any difficulties that came, Swamishri in his mind must have had the entire plan in his mind that from this time we will travel here to here to here. But when one thing gets disturbed, everything gets disturbed. But Swamishri was never disheartened. He never put his feet up, never put his hands up in frustration. Anything that needed to be done for the festival, Swamishri was more than happy to do. Now, in order to celebrate the festival on the biggest scale possible, Swamishri knew that as many funds that were possible needed to go to Gadara. Now, in the meetings, it was decided that some of the regional mandirs in the Sanstha, the mandirs that had their own projects going on, these projects should be postponed, and those funds should be redirected to Gadara. Now, this task is easier said than done. Who is going to meet the organizers, these local regional administrators, and tell them that we had to postpone your activities in your ongoing projects? Were obviously very important to the mandirs themselves. This responsibility was given to Pramukh Swami.
And so there was an ongoing project going on in Ahmedabad. And so Pramukh Sai Maharaj felt that, let's have a meeting. And so the 22nd December of 1960, Pramukh Sai Maharaj writes in his diary that he met with Niran Mukta Swami, Rasik Bhai, Ambalal Bhai, and a few others. And he took an update on the construction progress of Ahmedabad Mandir, different works that were going on. And then he explained to them that the need for fund for Gadara Vaishak Samayo. And he explained that we may have to pause the work here in Ahmedabad and divert the funds there. And, when someone gives this type of proposal, we would kind of want to, resist. But Pramukh Sai Maharaj was very transparent, he was very honest, and he painted a picture where everyone understood that it was our obligation and it was our opportunity to support and help, and so everyone was very happy.
And we can see that Pramukh Swami, another feather in his cap, in his ability to manage. We saw that Swamishri toured relentlessly, asked devotees to engage themselves in the festival financially. But in this way, we can also see that Swamishri traveled to the mandirs, he met these organizers, the administrators, he sat down with them. But Swamishri was also able to engage everyone mentally. He was also able to get everyone to look in the same direction. And that direction was the festival in Gadara. And Swamishri was very successful in convincing everyone to postpone their own projects, which will free up the funds and redirect these funds to Gadara.
Along with the fundraising, which was a part of the financial management of the Gadara Utsav, Swamishri as a leader was involved in every aspect of managing the Utsav. The resource management, the people management, PR, government relations, all such things. For resource management, for example, as part of his Vichran, Swamishri also encouraged those devotees who were farmers to donate grains from their farms for the Utsav.
So on the 24th of December 1960, we find Swamishri in Sankej, in a small village by the name of Sankej. And in his diary for this date, Swamishri writes that we stayed at Umed Bhai's house. All three brothers promised to donate about 1.2 tons of rice. From there we travelled to a village called Bhalyapura. In Bhalyapura, Jawaharlal, Gunwant Bhai and others collectively promised more than 1.2 tons of grains. They were saying to give another 100 kilograms or so. From there we went to Atladra, and at night, Kathavarta.
One side point to note here is that Swamishri withstood tiring days, hectic Vichran and constant challenges while shouldering the responsibilities of the entire festival. Despite this, we can see the mention in his diary of performing Kathavarta at night, even after such a long and tiring day. Swamishri never compromised his daily satsang priorities.
On the final 2 days of the year of 1960, on the 30th and the 31st of December, we find Swamishri in Anand, where he was there raising collections for lentils and pulses. In his diary for that day, Swamishri writes that we were in Anand and we collected pledges for pigeon peas for Gadra's festival. By night, the pledges amounted to 3.75 tons. The pledges are still ongoing, and the next day, by evening, the pulses pledged amounted to 7 tons.
So this was Swami's resource management, collecting all the raw materials in Seva for this festival. Now, in terms of PR and government relations, Swamishri was involved in meetings and major decisions for all of this. In a diary note from 27th of December 1960, written in Atladra, Swamishri writes
that from 5 in the evening, the meeting regarding the festival in Gadra began. Nandaji was present, and there was also a discussion regarding inviting the President of India, Rajendra Bapu, to the festival itself. Now, Swamishri's novel idea attests to his PR skills and Swami's willingness to reach out to the highest, the most esteemed guests. Why? To help raise the profile of the festival itself.
Another aspect of Swami's management was his man management, his people management. For the success of the festival, appointing the right people for the right tasks was critical. Swamishri swiftly accomplished this challenging task as well. After celebrating the festival of Vasant Panchami on 21st January 1961, Swami writes
that a meeting was held regarding the Gadra festival at 5 o'clock. Appointed 7 people, made preparations for the festival. Committees and subcommittees were formed. Swamishri in one way was so silent, but on the other hand he was able to activate so many people. Swamishri had an innate ability to look at someone, he could identify people's talents, and not only that, he could then engage those people in the best suited departments and sub-departments to ensure that the festival was successful.
For Swamishri, the festival of Gadada was completely about fulfilling the wish of Shastriji Maharaj and Yogiji Maharaj. It was his Guru Bhakti, celebrating the birthday of Yogiji Maharaj and marking a significant milestone for the Sanstha. Swamishri's man, money and material management was fueled by pure Guru Bhakti. When we take a look at how Swamishri did Seva for the Gadada Utsav, it's astounding to see just the sheer spectrum of different small and big aspects that Swamishri was involved in. From allocating site spaces for various services, to dealing with stone grits, from coordinating the electrical supply, to preparing kitchen facilities, from negotiating the prices and sourcing of spices and other raw materials for food, to arranging the accommodation facilities, from organizing the invitation cards to overseeing the making of the Kalash pots. Swamishri's diary gave but just a few glimpses into the spectrum of sevas that he silently shoulders behind the scenes for a successful festival in Gadada.
The time had come for celebrating the Gadra Vaishak Samayo, and the first day had arrived. On the first day of the Samayo, Yogiji Maharaj initiated 51 youths into the Sadhu fold. Yogiji Maharaj had a sankalp for quite some time that he wanted to initiate 51 well-educated youths into Sadhu fold, and today marked that historic day.
સ્વામીની સેનામાં આવજો રે તમે આવજો રે ના યોગીજી શુરા સરદાર.
સ્વામીની સેનામાં આવજો રે તમે આવજો રે એના યોગીજી શુરા સરદાર.
ભરતીમાં નામ નોંધાવજો રે તમે આવજો રે ના યોગીજી શુરા સરદાર.
ભરતીમાં નામ નોંધાવજો રે તમે આવજો રે એના યોગીજી શુરા સરદાર.
ધારી ધીરજની ઢાલ વાલે ત્યાગ તણી તલવાર.
ધારી ધીરજની ઢાલ વાલે ત્યાગ તણી તલવાર.
કાળને માયા થર થર કંપે ભક્તિ ભાલાથી અપાર.
કાળને માયા થર થર કંપે ભક્તિ ભાલાથી અપાર.
કેસરિયા કર
And the second day of the festival was to be celebrated fulfilling Shastriji Maharaj's wish to fulfill Bhagwan Swaminarayan's deep desire of building a mandir on the hill of Gadada. Today, that aspiration came to complete realization as the golden Kalash pots were to rise and remain atop the shikhars of the mandir. The historic date was 12th of May 1961.
સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી તેનું ખારું થાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી તેનું ખારું થાય. એની મરજી વિના કોઈથી કરણું નવ તોડાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી એનું ખારું થાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી એનું ખારું થાય. ગઢપુરમાં મંદિર બંધાવ્યું સૌને આનંદ થાય. ગઢપુરમાં મંદિર બંધાવ્યું સૌને આનંદ થાય. અદ્ભુત જેનો પ્રતાપ નિરખી સૌ કોઈ શરણે જાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી કેનું ધાર્યું થાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી કેનું ધાર્યું થાય. ભગતજીની આજ્ઞા ધરીને વિચર્યા સ્વામી આ. ભગતજીની આજ્ઞા ધરીને વિચર્યા સ્વામી આ. અક્ષર પુરુષોત્તમ પધરાવી પૂર્ણ કર્યા છે કાલ. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી તેનું ધાર્યું થાય. સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી એનું ધાર્યું થાય. નયન કઈ શરમ ગયાથી થઈ છે લીલા લે સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી કેનું ધાર્યું થાય સ્વામીજી તો મહાપ્રતાપી કેનું ધાર્યું થાય તેની મરજી વિના
Everyone, was mesmerized because they got to see the flags waving, and everyone, knew that how much effort Shastriji Maharaj had put in to creating these beautiful temples. And now Shastriji Maharaj's vision was completed, and his dakro, or his efforts in spreading Akshapurushotam Upasana had prevailed. And so everyone was overjoyed.
After brief speeches by the invited guests, Swamishri took to the stage to deliver an address. As the president of the Sanstha and the convener of the festival, Swami stated with great conviction, "As you all have gathered here and added to the glory of this occasion, Shriji Maharaj and Gunatitanand Swami will remain pleased upon all of you. Yogiji Maharaj, the medium of attaining Shriji Maharaj, is seated amongst us. Thus, surely please him." Around 40,000 devotees took part in these celebrations. All invariably experienced the feeling of being blessed.
The Kalash installation ceremony of Gadra. This marked the climax of Shastriji Maharaj's devotion to Maharaj and Swami. The power of Yogiji Maharaj's wishes, as well as Swamishri's ability to lead, Swamishri's leadership. Everybody in Gadra was profoundly impressed by Swamishri's leadership.
Puja Ishwarcharan Swami, in his own diary, writes of Pramukh Swami Maharaj's ability as a leader. Swamiji writes that at the time of the Golden Kalash installation ceremony in 1961, the seasonal hot and dry winds had caused a lot of difficulties in Gadra. Swamishri, however, was steadfast in continuing with his preparations amidst the troubles faced regarding the water shortage, the accommodation facilities in Gadra, along with the destructive aftermath of torn and broken tents left by the winds. Even the mightiest minds would have become unstable. Anyone else would have become disheartened.
Swamishri, however, remained stable in solving all the problems. His mind did not even waver, not even the slightest. As a result, thousands were inspired to continue to do seva. The whole of Gadra, the whole of Satsang were inspired by Swamishri's stability. The mayor of Gadra, Mohanlal Motichand, often used to say, Shastriji Maharaj has given, in the form of this Pramukh Swami Maharaj, a precious living gem. You shall all see its splendor in the future.
In shouldering the entire responsibility for this entire Utsav, Swamishri's true colors as a true leader, an ideal leader, shone through. In English, there's a saying that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But Swamishri, throughout this prasang and in his entire life, as Pramukh of the entire Sanstha, he proved this quote wrong. Because in this entire prasang, as Pramukh of the Sanstha, as head of the entire festival, so much power, but no sense of pride or ego in Swamishri's life. For example, on this Diksha day in Gadra, when Yogiji Maharaj gave Diksha to 51 youths, Yogiji Maharaj was sat in the middle of the stage, of this enormous, gigantic stage. But to Yogi Bapa's right-hand side was Pramukh Swami Maharaj himself. And as each newly initiated sadhu approached Pramukh Swami, Swamishri would garland him. But in Swamishri's diary, a diary in which for 6 months Swamishri wrote every single detail in minute detail, the smallest detail Pramukh Swami Maharaj wrote in the diary. However, this, such an enormous prasang in anyone's life, but there is no note of it in his diary.
This was indeed a sign of his unique leadership. He always kept himself behind the curtain and continued humbly to do the seva, and always highlighted the glory of the festival, the glory of the Guru and God.
So one day after the Samaya was finished, Yogiji Maharaj went to Gondal, and Pramukh Swami Maharaj stayed back in Gadra. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj often used to mention that mandap bandhwano hoy ત્યારે બધાને ખૂબ ઉત્સાહ. When it was time to do the preparations for the Samaya, put up the tent and so forth, everyone would have great excitement. પણ મંડપ છોડવાનો થાય ત્યારે કોઈ દેખાય નહીં. When it was time to dismantle the tent and wind everything up, there was no one there to be seen. And so similarly, after the festival was completed, many of the devotees had left and they went to their respective villages and towns and so forth. And so Pramukh Swami Maharaj stayed back with a handful of sadhus and devotees.
Swami himself would visit different places in search of beddings, utensils and other items. Wherever the devotees' uttara, accommodation were, he personally went to those places to clean and rearrange them. He also asked those with him to do the same, because it was Swami's principle to return any lent items and places with greater care and upkeep. He personally went and expressed gratitude to all those who had lent their cooperation and contribution to the festival's success.
Even though he was the Pramukh of the Sanstha, Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he didn't shy away from doing some menial tasks as well. So after the Samaya, there was a lot of garbage to be picked up. Etward, the patrara, the leaf plates that everyone ate on, they were just lying around, and Pramukh Swami Maharaj would go around, pick them up. And so Swami, he wasn't just there, bookkeeping and making sure everything was put back in right order, but he was, doing seva with everyone, and no task was too small for him.
Swamishri would also take the utmost care of using the money donated to Thakurji. He arranged to sell off any used equipment which had a good resale value. After completing the wind-up seva, which took 11 days following the festival's completion, Swamishri went to Sarangpur. On 27th May 1961, he reached Gondal, where Yogiji Maharaj was residing.
And he gave Yogiji Maharaj a detailed report of everything that happened in the Samaya. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he felt from the bottom of his heart that Yogiji Maharaj should know everything. And so before preparations for the Samaya, anything that happened during the Samaya, and whatever took place after the Samaya, Pramukh Swami Maharaj made sure that Yogiji Maharaj, he knew about it.
The Kalash installation of Kadra Mandir was a triumphant event for Swamishri and the Sanstha. However, accepting the credits and plaudits were never in Swamishri's interest or DNA makeup. Ultimately, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was the humble Pramukh, for the people, to do nothing more but serve. A pillar of a sadhu who experienced much satisfaction when supporting from the very bottom.
It is said that those who are most able to adapt become successful. Swamishri was the most adaptable president, and that is why everyone loved him as a unique and matchless Pramukh. Amazingly, Swamishri never complained about anything or made a fuss. For him, performing seva was of paramount importance, with or without special arrangements.
During 1961, Dharmajivan Das Swami used to travel with Swamishri as his accompanying Swami, as his Jod. He always observed that despite being the president of the Sanstha, there were never any special provisions for Swamishri. In Vatasan, Swamishri slept by placing two benches together in the old assembly hall. In Atladra, Swamishri slept under a neem tree. In Garada, he slept on a wooden cot next to the grill just outside the Kotari's office, sometimes even slept on a heap of sand. For his bathroom, Swamishri would use the general one used by everyone else. He would bathe under the same tap where everyone else bathed. Even in the extreme cold, he would bathe in the open with a bucket of cold water. He had no office, no workplace. Wherever he worked became his workplace. Dharmajivan Swami or any other sadhu would notice that Swamishri always ate with the others. He would eat thick, mostly cold rotis and whatever else was made for everyone else. Never did he complain or even suggest anything regarding food.
Swamishri's attendant sadhu once thought of preparing some special food for Swamishri. So on that occasion, he made him a small fulka rotli, a very thin rotli. As soon as Swamishri saw those rotlis, the pile of rotlis that were made for him, he asked the sevak. He said, "Where did you get these from?" And the attendant sadhu said, very lovingly, very affectionately, he said, "Swamishri, I made them." "For whom did you make them?" Swamishri asked. And the attendant sadhu, he said, "Why, Swamishri, these rotlis are for you. You never eat them, but today I thought of making them for you." Hearing that, Swamishri was a little annoyed. He said, "Never, ever make anything special for me." And he insisted, he said, "Serve me what is made for everyone in general." Saying that, he left those rotlis aside, and instead he ate the rotlis that had been made or prepared for everyone on that occasion. Swamishri always focused on changing oneself before changing the world. He always remained conscious of his duties, but never his rights. One incident that comes to mind in relation to that, Swamishri was in Ahmedabad and he was planning to go to Bochasan by train. Rasik Bhai, the secretary of the Sanstha at the time, had come to drop Swamishri off at the railway station. Like usual, Rasik Bhai asked his question. He said, "Swamishri, what class of ticket should I get for you?" The answer came, the usual answer, "Third class," Swamishri said. Rasik Bhai knew that, but he also knew that consistently Swamishri always chose the lowest standard of comfort and convenience. And even on that occasion, he immediately bought a third-class ticket and helped Swamishri and his Sevak Sant find a suitable seat together in the compartment. When he was happy that Swamishri and the Sevak Sant were quite comfortable in one corner of the compartment, he then got off the train to go back to the mandir.
As soon as Swamishri sat down in the coach, a few moments later, a wedding procession entered the same coach. It's a rowdy crowd, and Swamishri realized that the Sri Purush Maryada would not be maintained here. He told his Jyot Sant, "Let us go in the second-class compartment." Thus, they left to go to the second-class compartment. Within a few moments, the similar incident occurred here. A crowd entered the same coach, and again Sri Purush Maryada was questioned. Swamishri said, "Let us go back onto the first-class coach." Swamishri got off the second-class coach. On the platform, he told his Sevak Sant, "I will look after the luggage. You go and find Rasik Bhai." Rasik Bhai was found. Swamishri told Rasik Bhai, "Can you please buy a first-class ticket for us?" As Rasik Bhai went to buy the ticket, a conversation started between the Sevak Sant and Swamishri. The Sevak Sant said, "Swamishri, if we had bought the first-class ticket from the beginning, then we would not have to go through this whole ordeal."
Swamishri remained calm and composed. He gently responded. He said, "Try to understand. We should never waste or misuse Thakurji's money. Not even a penny. Please try to understand that." The Sevak Sant said, "Swamishri, I know what you're saying, but there are many people in the Sanstha, even today, who use or misuse the money many a times. You are the president. You are bound to spend it wisely. Then why don't..." Swamishri stopped him. Swamishri stopped the Sevak mid-sentence and he said, "Listen, whoever misuses Thakurji's money will have to suffer. But we must not follow them. We should do our seva and save Thakurji's money in whatever way we can. In relation to this, in 1987, somebody asked a question to Swamishri. He said, in those days, don't you think it would have been more convenient if you had a car assigned to yourself for all the traveling that you needed to do? That would have made life much more easier. Swamishri said, no, I had never ever thought about that. Then he added, he said, we should serve with whatever we have at our disposal.
Anyone who's close to Swamishri will understand and know that for him, comfort were as painstaking as arrows. Whenever someone talked about accommodation facilities for him or renovating all residence, Swamishri always leaned towards simplicity.
We know that if in a mandir he was given a new uttaro, then he always insisted on absolute simplicity, the absolute bare necessity. If his uttaro was changed from an old room to a new room, he always took all the old furniture to the new room. There was no need for any unnecessary costs. And many of the mandir's kotaris could attest to this. When they tried to put something new in Swamishri's room, some new furniture, a new bed or anything, they would sometimes be told off by Pramukh Swami. He never misused his power for any preferential treatment.
One incident that took place in Sarampur clearly shows the simplicity in Swamishri. A devotee by the name of Krishnalal, with the help of the Sevak Sant, prepared a very simple wooden bed for Swamishri. The only reason for this was so that Swamishri could sleep comfortably at night. On that particular night, as per routine, Swamishri came to sleep. And to his surprise, he saw this new bed. Upset and annoyed on seeing the new bed, he immediately questioned the Sevak Sant.
What is this? Who's put this bed here? Why is this bed here? The Sevak himself was prepared. He told Swamishri that, Swami, I have got this bed with Sant Swami's permission. In his mind, he thought that if I say Sant Swami's name, Swamishri had that much respect and love for Sant Swami that Swamishri wouldn't say anything. But Swamishri insisted that I have no illness. I have no joint pains. Why did you be so smart? Who paid for this bed? Again, the Sevak was prepared. He said that, Swami, there was a devotee by Krishnalal from Naryad, and he has lovingly donated this bed. Do not worry.
This conversation continued for half an hour, by which time Sant Swami came to the room. Sant Swami told Swamishri that the Sevak Sant has gone at great length to prepare this bed. Sarampur is your home. Please use it and fulfill the wishes of the Sevak Sant.
We know Swamishri's relationship with Sant Swami was one of great love and respect. So Swamishri didn't say anything. He went to sleep on the bed, but when Sant Swami had retired to bed, when the Sevak had retired to bed, Swamishri instantly slept on the floor and he put the bed in the corner. And that bed, as we know, for an entire year, Swamishri didn't touch that bed.
Swamishri was the people's president. He lived with the people and he worked with the people. He was never above them or even apart from them. His very existence was for others. During the stay in Kolkata, Narayan Prasad Das Swami had a series of paintings that were being exhibited in the United Commercial Bank. This was a very prestigious form of an exhibition because his modern art, which depicted this essence of spirituality, was being shown to the public, and it was an air-conditioned hall. People were going to come to it, and Yogi Maharaj himself had come especially to inaugurate this exhibition on the 27th of April 1968. On one of the days of the exhibition, an eminent Bengali literator, Tarashankar Bandyopadhyay, he was going to visit the exhibition. Now, for Narayan Prasad Das Swami to be present at the exhibition when Mr. Bandyopadhyay came to visit, he needed a jod, a sant that would accompany him to the venue at that time. Now, there was already a dire shortage of swamis. Everyone was occupied in some sort of other seva. So Narayan Prasad Swami was in desperate need for another Swami to accompany him. And this put him in a conundrum. Whom could he ask to accompany him? Time was running out, making him increasingly anxious. He even began to wonder that, look, if I don't make it in time to the venue, I'm going to miss this, great personality.
Now, at this time, Pramukh Swami Maharaj happened to walk past. And Pramukh Swami Maharaj was very sharp. He instantly realized the situation. He immediately approached Pujya Narayan Prasad Swami and said that I'll come with you, don't worry. Narayan Prasad Swami was absolutely shocked that the busiest Sanstha not only in Calcutta, but the busiest Sanstha in the entire organization, the one guy that had the most and the biggest seva, the most departments to look after, the biggest responsibility, had made himself available for me to go to this exhibition. This was Pramukh Swami Maharaj's personality. He was always ready to help the most junior sadhu with their most simplest of problems. Pujya Narayan Prasad was deeply touched by Swamishri's sadhuta and his saintliness. And it so happened at that time, Pujya Mahan Swami walked past. He also realized the situation. He, a senior sadhu in his own right, he offered to go with Pujya Narayan Prasad Swami, so Pujya Swamishri, Pramukh Swami, could attend his other responsibilities.
But just seeing Pramukh Swami's unhesitant readiness to accompany a young sadhu to his event left an indelible impression on everyone's hearts. Swamishri was so humble, so unassuming. It was so easy to forget that he was even the president of the Sanstha. During the stay in Bhadra, when Yogiji Maharaj would be resting in the afternoon, many of the young sadhus and devotees would head off to the river Und and go swimming there. Swamishri would also occasionally accompany them. Once, while everyone was enjoying swimming in the river, a few of them decided to erect a human pyramid in the water. And Swamishri seconded the idea, and so everyone was overjoyed. Now, normally when you're forming a human pyramid, those with strong shoulders and strong bodies would form the lowest platform, on top of which the other layers would be added. The other people would climb on top there. Those who were lighter in weight would therefore usually go on top. That's how you get a tall and uniform triangular pyramid. Now, because Swamishri was comparatively stronger built, he was asked to stand in the lowest layer. He always had sturdy shoulders. As Swamishri took his position, other sadhus, younger sadhus, began forming the upper layers of the pyramid by climbing on top of him. They would place their feet on Swamishri's shoulders. Now, although there were a few other sadhus on the lowest layer besides Swamishri, everyone wanted to climb off Swamishri. They wanted that smruti, that love. After forming a perfect pyramid with 3 human layers, Yogi Charandas Swami, the 15-year-old young sadhu, he climbed up on the topmost layer and he became the pinnacle. And he loudly hailed the Jainat, Sajanand Swami Maharaj Ni Jai, Akshapurushottam Maharaj Ni Jai. It was a very exhilarating atmosphere. Everyone was enjoying themselves. Then after a while, one by one, those from the top layers down to the lower layers began jumping off the pyramid into the water. They would do this randomly and repeatedly again and again. And as this fun continued, Swamishri, still in the lowest layer, he had to bear the burden of everyone else's weight until the very end. It was a very moving scene because he was there to keep everyone happy and let everyone have fun. To see a group of teenage sadhus enjoying themselves like this and playing on the shoulders of their father figure was something very memorable, it's very touching. Swamishri, he'd soared so high spiritually, it remained so down to earth. For him, there was no gap, no generation gap, no spiritual gap. With the young, the new, with novices, he could assimilate, he could integrate, he could get along with everyone, and everyone could get along with him.
A leader for the welfare of his people, Leading by example with an unmatched level of humility, Swamishri struck an accord with the entire satsang fellowship that would eventually resonate throughout the world. Next time, we will experience a love that uproots, uplifts, and transcends all feelings. Swamishri will act as a guardian for the devotees and a mother for the sadhus. This is a role that people didn't think they needed from Swamishri, but it became something they would never be able to shrug off ever again. Join us next time for episode 3, A Blissful Kin.
મને તો એમ જ થયા કરે છે કે આપણા કેવા ભાગ્યનો પાર આવે એમ નથી કે પ્રમુખ સ્વામી જેવા ગુરુનો યોગ થયો. તેઓએ આપણને સૌને નિહાલ કર્યા છે. એ અનુભવ આ જીવન ચરિત્ર વાંચતા વિશેષ દૃઢ થશે. આ વાંચતા ખૂબ જ આનંદ થશે. સ્વામી બાપા નજર આગળ તરવરવા લાગશે.
कैसा जादू आप मिले ओ स्वामी, कैसा जादू आप मिले स्वामी हम पे किया, हर खुशी से हमारा जीवन भर दिया स्वामी, भर दिया. दिल में तेरे लिए कुर्बानी रहे प्रमुख स्वामी, तुम्हारी कहानी रहे. जब तक धरती पे सूरज की रोशनी रहे, ये सितारे और चांद की वो चांदनी रहे. प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी कहानी रहे. प्रमुख स्वामी तुम्हारी